Springfield. Would you like to sit or would you like to stand?
I think one of us will stand and one of us will sit.
Okay, okay, okay.
Good morning. Bonjour. My name is Leslie Seawright, and I'm joining you from Missouri State University this morning. Is this my clicker? Okay, excellent. I wanted to give you just a short introduction of where we're from. Is this? Down. Ah, there we are. So often when I'm traveling, people have no idea where Missouri is. And if you didn't, that's quite all right. We're right in the middle of the country. We're far enough away from Texas and California that doesn't even help people situate where we are. So that is where we are, that little yellow dot in Springfield, Missouri. This is a little bit about our program and our students. I wanted to give you some context, recognizing that you've never probably had the pleasure of visiting our lovely university. We're located right in the southwest corner of Missouri, and in this area we have some beautiful hills and lakes and trees. It's quite a beautiful place. Most of our students come from this region. So most of our students are coming from Missouri itself. Lots of them have never seen the ocean. They haven't traveled around to a lot of different places. It's something that unfortunately Americans don't always have the chance to do very much. So we have a student population that is not always as cosmopolitan, I think, as we would like them to be. But that's part of my job, right? Is to help expose them to the world and some of the outside forces that are at play a lot of times. Along with our program, we have a technical and professional writing program. It's housed in our English department. However, it's the largest program in the English department. So we have 145 majors. These are undergraduate students that are majoring in technical and professional writing. And then we have 45 graduate students. We also have probably 300 or so minors. Our students in creative writing and literature see the technical and professional writing minor as a way that they might actually get a job when they graduate. So we agree. Our students mainly see, our program as developing a real set of skills that will help them in the workplace. We emphasize real-world writing. We do a lot of service learning. In fact, the small portion of what I'll be talking about today is a service learning project. So our students come in seeking the ability to go out and get a job in the field of technical and professional writing. Also, we have 20 faculty members in our program. Of those, 10 are full-time faculty teaching several classes during the semester. Okay. Let's see, down. There we go. So the course that I'm going to talk to you today is one that I taught for the first time last semester. This is a scientific and technical editing course. It has been designed as a service learning course. So we work with a real client, and I was so grateful for Sarah's presentation because we do a one client, one project for this course, and now you all know exactly what that is. So we had one client, and they gave us one document. All the students were instructed to edit this document in a way that would serve the client well and the client's readers. We have a long history of service learning in our program as well. So our community partner is an organization in Springfield, Missouri called the Rainbow Network. They gave us a 60-page booklet that they hand out to prospective donors. They run a large organization that helps Nicaraguan people in Nicaragua form communities. They help them with medical care, schooling, agricultural needs, and they really try to help the villages in Nicaragua prosper by providing them as many services as possible. And they've been working with Nicaraguan communities for a long, long time. So this is a well-established partner. However, their booklet, as they admitted, had been thrown together several different pieces of information over the years. And at one point, my students actually thought that I had gone through the booklet purposely messing things up. They thought that I had gone in there and rearranged items and had deleted sentences and added sentences, and I said, no, I promise, I haven't touched it. So the booklet was in quite a bit of need for editing, need for a critical eye, and so our students definitely were needed for this project. Along with, of course, editing, which seems like a very simple, straightforward skill, which I'm going to complicate in just a minute, they were also asked to research this audience, right? To develop a style sheet. And then they, of course, learned about the project. As part of the audience research, this is a conservative Christian area of the country, and this is a conservative Christian organization. Now, not all of my students were conservative Christians, as you can imagine. In fact, I had one student who is a Wiccan. I don't know, some of you may be familiar, is a Wiccan, so witches and wizards and that sort of thing, and that's a religion. And so she came to me with concerns. She didn't know how she was going to write for a Christian audience. And I said, no, this is perfect for you. This is fantastic, because so many of our students kind of had a mindset of a conservative Christian audience, whereas you get to really investigate and figure out, how do I write for this audience? Who are they? What do they know? What would they like to know? How can I impact them, with ethos and with pathos, and what kind of appeals will they be interested in? So our students had the opportunity to really investigate this audience population. This was one of the students' experiences, and I'll just go ahead and read it quickly, and then I'll talk about a little bit about some of our challenges and interesting things. We do reflections at the end of the semester, and so this came from one of those reflection papers. I really enjoyed working with a service learning client. It provided me with a real document that will be used by real people, which was a major source of motivation for me while I was working on it. I had an actual audience that I could think about while I was working, and I had an actual client to communicate with if I had any questions. Excuse me. Now, some of the interesting things that came up during this project was that we had many translated Nicaraguan villagers talking about their experience. I'm sorry. And as a part of that, they came across as translations from Spanish into English. And obviously, some interesting things happen when you translate, right, from language to language. But many of my students wanted to go through and make them, I'm so sorry. Many of my students wanted to go through those translations and try to make them sound like American college students, because their job was editing, right? So they thought, oh, I am to edit, thus I will make this language that appears a bit broken and definitely non-native, and so I will make it sound better, right? So we talked about the ethics involved in taking people's voices and making them your voice, or putting people's words into the way that you would say something, or taking a turn of phrase, right? So when you translate from the Spanish into English, you can get these beautiful phrases that wouldn't be a native phrase, but it's still beautiful, and trying to take that and take it back into something, well, we wouldn't say it this way, let's say it this way. So we had a lot of really interesting discussions about the ethics of language and translation. And then along with that, we also had a lot of interesting conversations about ethos and pathos in regards to these Christian donors. We didn't want to present these Nicaraguan people as desperate and helpless and unable to provide for themselves, which was a pathos attempt that some of the students wanted to take. They wanted to describe them in these very desperate situations, and oh, if only you could come and save them. If only you could donate money to help them. And so we got to talk a lot about the ethics of how we can celebrate the Nicaraguan people's strength and ability to do so much with so little, and that's the form of helping. You give them this much and they will produce this much, So to see it as a form of helping and aid versus, desperate people who need to be saved. So I think those were two of the great kind of interdisciplinary or silos that we were able to jump across, and students could really begin to understand language, voices, and ethics in a new way thanks to this project. So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Stanton.
Which one?
Down. And that's 3 minutes.
Bonjour. I'm so happy to be here. And the student research that we listened to earlier, you are doing some very similar things to what we are doing in our program as well. It was encouraging and inspiring to listen and understand that we're all doing very similar work. We have the same interests. That's a lot of fun. I'm going to talk about a project that we did in a graduate level class that I teach. Graduate students were my students. Some of them finished a bachelor's degree many years ago, maybe in communication, maybe in education, maybe in something totally different than technical writing, and they were learning now what technical writing is. Others in our program, of the 120 majors students that we have, some of them stay and do our master's program. So that was also part of my audience as an instructor for them. You know, they've been here 4 years, they know so much, and others are just learning. So it's a very interesting class to teach anyway. Some students, moving on. So we worked on a project. The city of Springfield, right in the middle of the country, has about 160,000 in their population. And some of the officials of the city came to the university as a community partner and asked for a report. Their focus was on 2 neighborhoods that are underprivileged and underserviced, and they wanted the students to research how can the elderly people in this community, they called it age in place, how can they stay in their own homes and have productive lives and be on their own and independent without having to move to a care facility or having to move in with family, and how can we support them in that? Issues we needed to investigate were food availability and social concerns. They need to be able to socialize with other people. Transportation, maybe they were not close to a bus stop. Maybe they had to have assistance walking. They could not climb onto the stairs at a bus or walk down a very broken up sidewalk, would not be safe for them. So those were some of the things that we had to discover. So our silos, I appreciate that terminology. A lot of time people ask me, oh, do you know this faculty member in the business department? Or do you know so-and-so in the communications department? I'm sorry, I don't. I live in my office, I go to class, I have meetings with students. I'm very siloed in the English department. And so what our project entailed, we worked with students in the dietetics. They study food and what to eat to keep your body healthy, how your body digests food. Dietetics students will go into hospitals and to care facilities and help make menus for people who have different needs in their diet. And gerontology students, we also worked with them. They study the elderly and how to care for the elderly, how to keep them active and involved. So graduate students, my students in the technical writing class, they were doing the research with the dietetics and the gerontology students. It was interesting, the undergraduate students were the subject matter experts in this situation, and then the graduate students were the report writers, and so they had to interview the subject matter experts, the undergraduates, and they had to write the report. So the deliverable was to the city of Springfield. We had to understand who the audience was. It might be an official of the city. So someone high up in the hierarchy, we wanted to impress them. We had to be very careful with our words. It also might be someone who might provide some assistance. So maybe someone in a social organization. So we had very different levels of audiences as we did even in the ones who prepared it. So students had to analyze the audience, determine what information was important to include. They had to decide what's the design of the whole document. How will we bind this? What picture will we put on the front to make it more meaningful? And then the page layout and design as well. So they had to interview the subject matter experts, the undergraduates. They had to also decide the page, what graphics they would include. So there was a lot involved. The interdisciplinary benefits, students learned about people who are 1 and 2 generations older than they are, and we talked about their needs and how to include them still in their lives. Dietetic students taught about the dietary needs, food availability, and simple and safe recipes. So something that maybe someone with some beginning dementia, what can they make in their home to be safe? So it was an interesting concept for college students to think about. Gerontology students taught about the needs of the older generations, talked about how can we get our elderly people into community centers where they might have a meal with someone and just visit. Important things that we take for granted every day. In addition to the benefit of the students being involved with other disciplines, and so we broke down those silos across the university in different programs, because it was a service learning course, they completed a real project for a real client instead of just something for the teacher. So it was meaningful for them. One thing I want to say, at Missouri State, we might be just a little bit spoiled because we take for granted, I know, we have a citizenship and service learning office. We call it CASTLE. And they have already established community partners. And so I go to the director and I say, I'm going to do a project. And she says, fantastic, let me send you our list of 160 community partners that your students may choose from. And then she sends an email to those community partners and says, hey, you may be getting contacted by a student. Remember, you've agreed to work with us. So be very friendly, because sometimes they do stop communicating in the middle of the semester, and then your student is, oh my goodness, or they take 2 weeks to get information back to the student, and I'm like, yes, welcome to the real world. This is how we operate. So it's very meaningful for the students, and they do get a taste of what it's like to go into industry. Thank you very much.